the sounds of it, to find a replacement. And that replacement is going to have to pretty quickly go into an election. And they're going to go into that election, presumably behind in some way. We'll see, I think, as a result of this Liberal leadership in some way, how much of the Liberal Party's polling and how much of the Conservative Party's support in the polls is simply based on how much people are tired of Justin Trudeau. We'll see whether a Liberal Party that maybe is slightly different but doesn't completely deviate from what it has done over the last decade, if there's a different person in charge of that party, do people react to it differently? We'll see. But I think, the way Justin Trudeau has kind of come to this end is I guess, fittingly dramatic and somewhat messy. And now it's going to be kind of a very frenetic couple of months as, first the Liberal Party tries to pick a new leader. And then, let's not forget Justin Trudeau is going to remain as Prime Minister and will be Prime Minister on the day Donald Trump is inaugurated as president. And that will be the other thing that he, in his final days in office, will presumably have to deal with.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider there for sure. I was also struck, as you said there, that at how the pandemic became a turning point for his leadership, and also I would suggest the other piece of that, which was invoking for the first time the Emergency Measures Act to deal with that convoy, which also fed into a lot of anger towards Justin Trudeau. And I think it's a very fair question to ask whether Liberal Party fortunes improve in any dramatic way once Justin Trudeau is gone, given the party will have been in power for a decade, and that is sort of the life course of a government and of a party in this country. So whoever the next leader is going to be has some real significant challenges. And again, that could shape who indeed enters the leadership race. Fittingly, the Prime Minister is late. This has not changed. He will emerge shortly, though, I'm sure, from his home to speak to Canadians, again, for the first time since things have really let's be honest, gone badly over the past number of weeks since Chrystia Freeland quit her job as Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister because the Prime Minister told her he was going to move her to a different role and he was going to have a different kind of cabinet entirely. That entire plan fell apart, and Chrystia Freeland left in a dramatic fashion on the very day she was supposed to table the fall economic update. Justin Trudeau was forced to put in place a new finance minister, shuffle his cabinet to some extent, and for the past couple of weeks, he has been spending time with his family, presumably talking to advisors and friends about next steps. And as soon as he comes out of that door, he will tell us that his next step is to leave as leader of the Liberal Party of Canada. He is, we are told, going to take about 4 questions, 2 in English, 2 in French. So I won't get my year-end interview at this moment either, David, but I would imagine that this is a difficult moment for the Prime Minister. He can be an emotional person, and knowing how much time he's had to reflect on this, perhaps he's at peace with it. I'm speculating here, but giving up a job that you love is, even if part of it was your fault, still isn't a fun day.
No, I don't imagine any part of this is easy. And just speaking with some people close to the Prime Minister throughout the weekend and even this morning in between the periods where I'm not on the air, they're sad about this, but there's also some relief, from some of them that at least this is, I don't want to say it's completely their choosing, because it's not completely their choosing, but it's a better departure than going into the buzzsaw of a general election with the polling dynamic and the political dynamic, what it is, and getting smashed upon the rocks of shifting public opinion, which is kind of where this ship was going. Look, you look at the Langley-Cloverdale by-election, which they lost by 50 points. That was a seat they had held and won in 2 of the last 3 elections. In Elmwood-Transcona, which is a Winnipeg seat that the NDP won and the NDP held, but the Liberals got 4% in an urban riding while in government, which is a bad number. And then you, of course, have the Toronto-St. Paul by-election and the LaSalle-Verdun by-election, seats held by cabinet ministers, safe Liberal seats, no longer held by cabinet ministers, no longer held by Liberals. And, so it's not just public opinion polling, which can be fickle and volatile and can change. These are actual outcomes and actual results. And then you've got the suddenly florid letter writing campaigns from inside the caucus and inside the backbench calling for him to go, as more and more people either go public, adding to the calls for the Prime Minister to step down as Liberal leader to give them a chance to fight back as best they can against Pierre Poilievre in the next election. Or, others just announcing, like Marco Mendicino did a few days ago, that they're just not going to run again. And how many more of those are there? And how many more of those are there if the Prime Minister stays? Because there is a real scenario where he chooses to stay on and a bunch of other people decide that they're going to go as a result, right? And so you're left sort of leading the ashes of a once sizable and powerful majority government. So nothing about this has been easy, just like nothing about being the Prime Minister has been easy, and just like nothing about becoming the next Liberal leader and the next Prime Minister will be easy. I was just jotting down sort of like what the job ad would look like. There's a polling deficit, there's a fundraising gap, there's a motivated and financed opponent, you have a jittery caucus, you're coming off a string of by-election defeats, and by the way, Donald Trump is coming back into the White House in 14 days. That's what you're signing up for, should you step forward. And a lot of people may look at that and look at the state of things and say, why would you want to do this? Well, for whatever period of time you get to be the Prime Minister of a G7 country, you do get a chance to make your argument to hold on to that job in an election. And I've covered politics for about 20 years or so now, Rosie, and the people who wait for the timing to be perfect, somebody else who's hungrier and more motivated takes it from them when the timing is perfect. If you want a job like this, you go for the job when it's available. You don't wait for the stars to align and this perfect constellation of facts to appear, because when the stars are aligned and the facts are perfect, the job isn't available, or a much more competitive and more aggressive field of candidates comes in and takes it from you. So that's why you run now. And you hope that you can save the furniture enough to be either a strong opposition, to pull off a miracle and win this thing, or to hold Pierre Poilievre to a minority government, based on where things are today, and allow yourself to build back. That has to be the play, that has to be the argument, and that has to be the expectation if you're signing up for this now.
And the person who would agree wholly with your analysis there, David, is none other than Justin Trudeau, who did just that, who took the party when it was in dire straits, built it back through various ways, not only recruiting star candidates, including Chrystia Freeland, changing the way the membership worked, changing the fundraising, changing the way the party communicated with Canadians, moving the agenda and the policy agenda towards a much more progressive agenda, yes, in part because of the NDP, but in part because that's what Justin Trudeau wanted, and then eventually winning a majority government in 2015. So you're right, there's a playbook here, and the candidates that we've been talking about for Liberal leadership will have to decide if they have what it takes to get this done in a short period of time, knowing that the payoff may not be immediate, but it might happen eventually. But also facing, as you pointed out, a formidable opponent who not only has a whole pile of cash, but also has managed to really speak to Canadians in a very impressive and successful way through a very difficult period for them. And the irony a little bit with what we're seeing today, and I'll go to you, David, and then Aaron, if the Prime Minister continues to be late, is that one of the things that I understand the Prime Minister and his people were waiting for was to see the economy start turning, right? To see the inflation numbers go down, to see the interest rates go down, and to start hoping that Canadians would start to feel some of that. There was a story over the course of the weekend that rents have gone down in Toronto. They've gone down in the GTA. These are all things that they thought could lead to people believing in him again. We've got the 2-minute warning for the Prime Minister, but I'll let you say something here, David.
Yeah, look, that has always been sort of the hope, but hope isn't a plan. And those are all external factors that you're counting on to change the dynamic in the country. And while inflation is under control, the cost of living is not. Those price increases that have been hitting the system since the pandemic, since the invasion of Ukraine, they're still baked in, and cost is elevated. And even if people are seeing proper wage growth now, they're not necessarily getting further ahead, because a basket of food costs more, your mortgage costs more. And so while the increases will be smaller for the people who are renewing now and in the future than they were a year ago, they're still increases, and they're still mad about it. And the other thing that's happening is that inflationary pressures resume and monetary policy eases. It's largely because the economy is slumping. Unemployment's nearly 7%. Growth is flat and declining. There's some real economic headwinds the country is facing, and that is a big reason why, even though those conditions changed, the political conditions didn't.
Yeah, and of course the criticism that the government didn't move fast enough to respond to some of those issues around affordability and the cost of living, something that they did try to do, as you'll remember, before Christmas with the GST holiday, which is still in place until mid-February, and then those rebate checks that may well not ever see the light of day, we will see. But Parliament is now being prorogued till March 24th, so it seems hard to imagine that those things will happen. Prime Minister of Canada expected to come out of his home there, Rideau Cottage, which is on the grounds of Rideau Hall, to speak directly to Canadians. There he is, announcing that he will step down as Liberal leader of Canada. Let's listen now to the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau.
This again. Bon matin. Every morning I've woken up as Prime Minister. I've been inspired by the resilience, the generosity, and the determination of Canadians. It is the driving force of every single day I have the privilege of serving in this office. That is why, since 2015, I've fought for this country, for you, to strengthen and grow the middle class. Why we rallied to support each other through the pandemic, to advance reconciliation, to defend free trade on this continent, to stand strong with Ukraine and our democracy, and to fight climate change and get our economy ready for the future. We are at a critical moment in the world. Mes chers Canadiens, à chaque matin, je me suis réveillé.
Each and every morning, I woke up as Prime Minister, inspired by the resilience, generosity, and determination that characterizes us so well as Canadians. This is what motivates me each and every day that I've had the privilege of serving as Prime Minister. This is why, since 2015, I have fought for this country and for you, to strengthen the middle class. We have mobilized as Canadians to support each other during the pandemic in order to advance reconciliation, in order to defend free trade on our continent, for our support of Ukraine and democracy, and to fight against climate change and to prepare the economy for the future. We are going through a critical time.
My friends, as you all know, I'm a fighter. Every bone in my body has always told me to fight because I care deeply about Canadians. I care deeply about this country, and I will always be motivated by what is in the best interest of Canadians. And the fact is, despite best efforts to work through it, Parliament has been paralyzed for months after what has been the longest session of a minority parliament in Canadian history. That's why this morning I advised the Governor-General that we need a new session of Parliament. She has granted this request, and the House will now be prorogued until March 24th. Over the holidays, I've also had a chance to reflect and have had long talks with my family about our future. Throughout the course of my career, any success I have personally achieved has been because of their support and with their encouragement. So last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process. Last night, I asked the President of the Liberal Party to begin that process. This country deserves a real choice in the next election, and it has become clear to me that if I'm having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option in that election. Mes chers amis, Comme vous savez,
Dear
je suis un
friends,
fighter.
as you know, I
Dans
am
mon
a
fort
fighter.
intérieur, je me suis toujours battu parce que je me soucie
Deep inside, I've
profondément
always
des
fought
Canadiens.
because I care deeply
Je
about
serai
Canadians,
toujours motivé
and
parce
I
qu'il est
will
dans le meilleur
always be
intérêt
motivated
des
by
Canadiens.
what is in the best interest
Et
of
le fait est
Canadians.
que
The
malgré
fact
tous les
is
efforts
that
déployés pour
despite
passer à
all
travers,
efforts
le Parlement est
to
paralysé
get
depuis
through
des mois.
this time,
Après ce qui a été la
Parliament
plus
has been
longue
paralyzed for
session de
months
Parlement
after what has
minoritaire
been
dans
the longest
l'histoire de
session
notre
of a minority parliament
C'est
in our
pourquoi ce
country's
matin,
history.
j'ai rencontré
And that
la
is why this
gouverneure
morning
générale pour lui
I
faire
met with the
savoir
Governor
que nous
General
avions
to tell
besoin
her
d'une
that
nouvelle
we
session du Parlement.
needed a new session of
Elle a
Parliament.
accédé à ma demande
She
et la
accepted my
Chambre
request,
sera donc
and so
prorogée
the House of
jusqu'au
Commons
24
will be
mars.
prorogued until March 24th.
Pendant le temps des fêtes,
During the
j'ai
holidays,
également eu
and
l'occasion de
I had the
réfléchir
opportunity
et d'avoir
to
de longues
reflect
conversations avec
and to
ma
have
famille
long talks with my
quant à
family
notre avenir.
with regards to our future.
Tout au long de ma carrière, tout le
Throughout my
succès que j'ai
career,
eu
all my
personnellement
success
est dû à leur
is
soutien
due to
et à
their
leur
support
encouragement.
and to their
Donc, hier soir,
encouragements.
au souper,
So last night,
partagé
over
avec
dinner,
mes enfants la décision
I
que
told
je
my
partage
kids
avec vous tous aujourd'hui.
what I am telling you
J'ai
here today.
l'intention de démissionner
I will
de mon
resign
poste de chef du Parti libéral
as
du
leader of the
Canada
Liberal
et
Party of
ministre
Canada
une
and as
fois
Prime
que le
Minister.
parti aura choisi
After
son
the
prochain
party
chef
will
à
have
l'issue d'un
selected
processus national
its next leader
rigoureux
after a
et
rigorous,
compétitif.
competitive, and
Hier
national
soir, j'ai
process.
demandé au président du parti de
Last night,
commencer les
I
étapes du
asked the
processus.
president of the Liberal Party to begin this
Le
process.
pays mérite un choix clair
Our
et
country
réel
deserves a real
lors des
choice
prochaines élections.
during
Il
the
est
next
devenu
election,
évident pour
and
moi
it's become
que si je
obvious
dois
for
me
me
concentrer sur des
that if I
batailles
have
internes,
to fight
je
internal
peux pas
battles,
être la meilleure option
I
lors de
cannot
ces
be
élections.
the best choice.
Le Parti libéral du
The
Canada
Liberal
est
Party
une
of Canada
institution importante dans l'histoire
is
de
an
notre
important
grand pays
institution
et de
in the
notre
history of
démocratie.
our great country
Un
and our
nouveau Premier
democracy.
ministre
A
et
new
chef du
Prime
parti
Minister and leader of the
portera
party
les valeurs et les idées
will
du
carry
Parti
forth
libéral
the
dans la
ideas and
prochaine
the
élection.
values of the Liberal Party
J'ai
during the
hâte
next election.
d'observer
I'm
le
looking
déroulement
forward
de ce processus
to
dans les
watching
mois à
this
venir.
process unfold over the following
Nous
months.
avons été élus pour la
We were
troisième
elected
fois en 2021
in 2021 for a third mandate to reinforce the economy after the pandemic and to advance the interests of Canada in a complex world. And that is exactly what I will continue to do and what we will continue to do for Canadians.
The Liberal Party of Canada is an important institution in the history of our great country and democracy. A new Prime Minister and leader of the Liberal Party will carry its values and ideals into that next election. I'm excited to see the process unfold in the months ahead. We were elected for the third time in 2021 to strengthen the economy post-pandemic and advance Canada's interests in a complicated world. And that is exactly the job that I and we will continue to do for Canadians. Merci beaucoup, mes amis.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now go to questions, starting with Laurence Martin, Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau.
Hello, Mr. Trudeau.
Vous vouliez le faire, ce combat contre Pierre
You
Poilievre.
wanted to
Des
have
batailles internes, il y en a dans votre
an
parti
election
depuis
with
plusieurs mois
Pierre
déjà.
Poilievre as your
Pourquoi est-ce
opponent.
que vous
There have been
décidez
internal
d'abdiquer
battles for a
maintenant?
while.
Qu'est-ce qui vous a fait
Why are you
quitter?
giving up now? What made you change your mind?
Comme vous savez, je suis pas
As you know,
qui recule facilement
I
devant un
don't
combat,
easily back down
surtout un combat
faced
si
with a fight,
important
especially a very important one for our party and for the country.
Mais
But
je fais ce job parce que
I do this job
l'intérêt des Canadiens et le bien-être
because
de notre pays, de notre démocratie,
the interests of Canadians and the
cœur.
well-being of our democracy is something that I hold dear.
C'est devenu clair
And it's
que,
become clear to me
je ne
that
peux pas être
I cannot
le chef dans les prochaines
be the
élections
leader
à cause
during
des
the next
batailles.
elections due to internal battles.
As you all know, I am a fighter, and I am not someone who backs away from a fight, particularly when a fight is as important as this one is. But I have always been driven by my love for Canada, by my desire to serve Canadians, and by what is in the best interest of Canadians. And Canadians deserve a real choice in the next election. And it has become obvious to me with the internal battles that I cannot be the one to carry the Liberal standard into the next election.
Vous êtes au pouvoir depuis près de 10
You've
ans.
been in power
Le
for nearly
Canada a
10
changé
years.
avec votre
Canada
gouvernement.
has changed with
S'il
your
y a une
government.
réalisation
If there's
que vous nommez dont vous êtes le plus fier,
one
dans le
accomplishment that you're the
gouvernement,
most proud
et
of,
peut-être
I know there
un
are several,
regret
but perhaps the thing you are most proud of, and maybe one regret?
2015, on a été
Answer.
élus sur
In
une
2015, we were
promesse de
elected
travailler
on a
pour la classe
promise
moyenne.
to work for the middle class in this country,
Et c'est ce qu'on a pu faire.
and that is what we did.
On a réduit la pauvreté.
We reduced the
On a
level of
aidé
poverty.
énormément les familles.
We help families.
On a créé une économie
We
qui
created
fonctionne
an economy
pour bien plus
that
de
works
monde en se
for many
préparant
more
pour un
people
avenir
while
et
preparing
plus
for the
numérique
future,
et
a more digital
où les
future,
changements climatiques
and
vont
to
avoir un plus
prepare
grand impact.
for a world where climate change will have a greater
On
impact.
a fait énormément de travail
We've
avec
done
les
a lot
Canadiens.
of
Le
work with
Canada est
Canadians,
meilleur
and
à cause
Canada
du travail
is
que
better
nous avons
off
tous
due
fait
to
au
the
cours des
work that we've
dernières
all
années.
done over the past few years.
Un regret,
A regret?
je continue à penser que
I
si
continue to think that
notre système
if our
électoral aurait été
electoral
changé
system had been changed
pour que les gens puissent
so
mettre
that
un
people
premier, un
would be
deuxième, un
able to
troisième choix sur le
have
bulletin,
a first, second, and third
les
choice on the
partis auraient
ballot,
passé plus de temps à
parties would have
regarder
spent
les
more
points qu'ils avaient
time
en commun pour
looking
être
at their
les
points in
deuxième
common
ou troisième choix des voteurs
to be the second or
plutôt
third
que
choice
de
of
voir
voters rather than to see this polarization.
Mais je ne pouvais pas de façon
But
unilatérale
I could not
changer
unilaterally
le scrutin.
change our ballot system.
Next question.
We got elected in 2015 to fight for the middle class, and that's exactly what we've done over the past years. We reduced their taxes, we increased the benefits to families, we made sure the economy was focused on working for everyone and not just a few, and that has changed. That has dropped poverty rates in Canada, that has brought more people into the workforce, that has moved us forward on reconciliation in a way that has deeply improved the opportunities and success of Canadians, despite the incredibly difficult times the world is going through right now. There's lots more work to be done, and I know that this party and this country and Canadians will keep doing it. If I have one regret, particularly as we approach this election, well, there are probably many regrets that I will think of, but I do wish that we'd been able to change the way we elect our governments in this country so that people could simply choose a second choice or a third choice on the same ballot, so that parties would spend more time trying to be people's second or third choices, and people would have been looking for things they have in common instead of trying to polarize and divide Canadians against each other. I think in this time, figuring out how to pull together and find common ground remains something that is really important for democracies. But I could not change unilaterally without support of other parties our electoral system. That wouldn't have been responsible.
Prochaine question.
Tonda McCharles, Toronto Star. Prime Minister, up until 3 weeks ago, you were intending to stay, and it seems that the event 3 weeks ago of Ms. Freeland coming out and saying you were firing her as your finance minister was the catalyst that brought us here today. So can you explain your side of what happened there?
Christia has been by my side for close to 10 years now. She has been an incredible political partner through just about everything we have done as a government and as a party over the past decade. I had really hoped that she would agree to continue as my deputy prime minister and take on one of the most important files that not just this government, but this country is facing, but she chose otherwise. In regards to what actually happened, I am not someone who's in the habit of sharing private conversations. Christia a été depuis presque 10 ans maintenant.
Christia was by my side for nearly 10 years. She was a political partner, a crucial political partner, given everything that we've gone through as a party and as a government. And I really would have wanted for her to choose to continue as my Deputy Prime Minister and that she would take over one of the most important files that we will have to deal with in the next few months. But she did not want to do that. As for details, I'm not one to share details of private conversations.
About the Liberal Party as an institution and the internal battles right now, but I'm wondering if you feel that another leader will have more success than you will at beating Pierre Poilievre in the next campaign.
Pierre Poilievre's vision for this country is not the right one for Canadians. Stopping the fight against climate change doesn't make sense. Backing off on the values and strength in diversity that Canada has always worked to pull itself together on is not the right path for the country. Attacking journalists, the CBC institutions, that's not what Canadians need in this moment. We need an ambitious, optimistic view of the future, and Pierre Poilievre is not offering that. And I look forward to the fight as progressives across this country stand up for the kind of vision for a better country that Canadians have always carried, despite the tremendous pressures around the world to think smaller, to veer towards the hard right, and to be less ambitious for what we can be and do as a country when the world really needs Canada.
That's not an answer, though. Yes or no? Is there another leader that could beat him?
Absolutely.
Sur le leader?
Oui.
Est-ce que vous
Pierre Poilievre.
en français, s'il vous plaît? Merci.
Pierre Poilievre a une vision
Pierre Poilievre has a very small vision and the wrong vision for Canada. If we even accept that he has a vision, he wants to back off on fundamental values, wanting to stop the fight against climate change, refusing to invest in a greener and more inclusive economy, trying to divide Canadians rather than uniting them to face the future together in an ambitious and optimistic way. That is not the right choice for Canadians. And I'm looking forward to be part of a progressive movement that will seek out a better future for our country and for Canadians. An optimistic vision for Canadians. Hélène Buzettier. Hello, Mr. Trudeau. 16 years ago, in December 2008, Stephen Harper prorogued Parliament to avoid a vote of non-confidence that he knew that he would lose because the three opposition parties would vote against him. It's the exact same situation that you find yourself in today. Stéphane Dion at the time had said, and I quote, that this was an affront to democracy. I'd like to know why what was bad for conservatives of Stephen Harper should be good for the Liberals of Justin Trudeau. The Governor General in 2008 had concluded, and correctly so, that the House had given formal confidence to Mr. Harper's government, despite a signed letter. This was a political document at the time. The voice of the House counts. So before stopping the work at the House over the holidays, we won 3 non-confidence votes. And so we're going to have to test the confidence of the House as of March to adopt the necessary budgetary credit so that the government can continue to function.
In 2008, the Governor General correctly concluded that because the very last times in the previous weeks that the confidence of the House had been tested, it had passed that confidence test, Stephen Harper continued to have the confidence of the House. And it actually would bear out because as soon as they came back from the prorogation, Stephen Harper won a confidence vote once again. So a political document or political speeches doesn't carry the kind of weight that winning a confidence vote means. But this prorogation will take us only into March, and there will be confidence votes in March in the passing of supply that will allow Parliament to weigh in on confidence in a way that is entirely in keeping with all the principles of democracy and the workings of our strong institutions.
Mais avec respect, Monsieur Trudeau, y a-t-il pas
With
quelque
all
chose
due
un peu
respect,
antidémocratique
isn't there
de
something a
suspendre
little
la
bit
possibilité du Parlement
anti-democratic to
d'exprimer sa
suspend the
non-confiance
possibility of
le
the
temps que
House
votre
of
parti
expressing
se
their
cherche
non-confidence
un sauveur?
while your party
Est-ce
is
qu'il ne
looking for
devrait
its
pas
savior? Shouldn't
juste se référer aux électeurs et de déclencher dès maintenant une élection?
shouldn't you call an election right now? Well, I think that as everyone in the press gallery, the parliamentary press gallery knows, the extent to which Parliament has been paralyzed now for several months. We are stuck on a question of privilege. There are constant obstructionist motions being presented, and we've accomplished very little over the past few months. The House of Commons needs a reset. People need to calm down and to get back to work for Canadians and not play petty politics constantly. And this is what we're seeing on behalf of the Conservatives right now. So this reset has two elements. Prorogation, to begin with. This allows us to start over with a fresh, new approach at the Parliament. And secondly, the Liberal Party will begin the process to choose a new leader. And I expect that if I am not the one who will lead the party to the next elections, the polarization that we see right now at the House of Commons should also settle down. Canadians need a fully functioning Parliament, specifically during this complex period, and both elements will represent the reset that we need. In English, but can you explain why you're not calling an election?
The parliamentary press gallery and anyone who's been watching politics closely over the past months will know that Parliament has been entirely seized by obstruction and filibustering and a total lack of productivity over the past few months. We are right now the longest serving minority government in history, and it's time for a reset. It's time for the temperature to come down, for the people to have a fresh start in Parliament, to be able to navigate through these complex times, both domestically and internationally. And the reset that we have is actually two parts. One is the prorogation, but the other part is recognizing that removing me from the equation as the leader who will fight the next election for the Liberal Party should also decrease the level of polarization that we're seeing right now in the House and in Canadian politics, and allow people to actually focus on serving Canadians in this House and with their work the way Canadians deserve.
On va prendre une dernière question.
Good morning, Prime Minister Stephanie Taylor with the National Post. Given, as you just said, there's going to be confidence votes in March, opposition parties have said they are prepared to bring down your government. What kind of chances do you think you are leaving to your successor, given that there will only be mere weeks for them to introduce themselves to Canadians before heading into an election, potentially?
I have a tremendous amount of confidence in both Canadians and in parliamentarians' interest in serving Canadians in the right way. We're in a minority government right now, and there hasn't been an active leadership in a minority government in more than 50 years in this country. And there is always going to be the challenge of having a leadership race while a parliament would face confidence votes in the course of delivering supply to the government. So this is something that we're going to navigate through, but I truly feel that removing the contention around my own continued leadership is an opportunity to bring the temperature down, have a government that will focus on the complex issues that are coming forward in the coming months, while the party gets to have a full national process that brings in people from right across the country and makes a determination about the best person to carry the progressive liberal standard into the next election.
Can you clarify whether ministers who would like to campaign for your job will have to step out of cabinet? And how can the Liberal government be in a position to protect Canadian businesses and Canadians from the threat of tariffs from incoming President Donald Trump when members of the government are going to be focused on who's going to be taking your job?
The government will still, and the cabinet will still be very much focused on doing the job that Canadians elected us to do in 2021, which is fight for their interests, stand up for their well-being, and make sure that they are good and that Canadians are protected and strong. There will be a leadership process and the rules will unfold over the coming weeks. But I can assure you that the tools and the need to stand up for Canadians, to protect Canadians in their interests and continue to fight for the economy is something that everyone in this government will be singularly focused on. Je peux souligner que, évidemment, les règles et les
I can say
conditions du
that
leadership du Parti libéral
the rules
vont
and
être
conditions for the leadership of the Liberal Party will be discussed in the following weeks. The government that was elected to protect Canadians and their interests in a very complex world that was elected in 2021 will continue to work with a focus and a singular emphasis on working in the interest of Canadians, while the party itself does what's necessary in order to go through leadership process. Thank you.
Merci tout le monde. Merci d'être ici dans une belle journée d'Ottawa. Bonne journée.
And that is Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada and leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, announcing that he will not hold that job much longer. Hello, I'm Rosemary Barton, Chief Political Correspondent, here with our special coverage of this monumental day in Canadian politics. Justin Trudeau confirming what we've been reporting this morning, that indeed he is stepping away from his role, saying that while this is a critical moment in the world, and he is a fighter, he has realized that he cannot continue to fight an election as he fights internal battles, told Canadians that he only told his kids last night at dinner that he was making this decision, to give you an idea of how he struggled with that decision over time. And he called for a leadership process, which he says should be, quote, robust, nationwide and competitive in choosing the next leader. The Parliament also has been prorogued until March 24th, which gives the Liberal Party some time to put that process in place. But a slightly emotional Justin Trudeau, obviously making an announcement that he didn't want to make, but felt at this point that he had no further choice. The host of Power and Politics, David Cochrane, is here, CBC's senior writer, Aaron Wary, and writer, author of a book about Justin Trudeau and on his leadership. I guess there won't be a follow-up, Aaron, at this stage. David, what did you take from what Justin Trudeau had to
Well,
say?
it was interesting. The Prime Minister said in announcing why he was leaving that it became very clear to him that if he has to keep fighting internal battles, he can't be the credible choice for Canadians in the next election. You can either say he's an acknowledgement of the caucus unrest, or you could say he's pointing the finger at the caucus unrest as the reason that he is leaving. It to some degree ignores the fact that they lost Toronto St. Paul's, lost LaSalle et Verdun, lost Langley Cloverdale by a massive margin. All seats they held, which they do not hold as of today. And Andy Fillmore, who is now the mayor of Halifax, was the MP for Halifax, resigned as the MP in August. And there still isn't a candidate in place as we get into January. He's got 54 days, I believe, to call that by-election. So there is the internal political dynamic, which he acknowledges. There's also the external political dynamic, which he kind of did not acknowledge. But he has landed on a decision that has seemed inevitable and obvious for quite some time, though you could see when you heard him at a place we're used to hearing him speak, though not for quite a while, how tough this was, how difficult this was, and how reluctant he was to do this. Like, as he said, he was a fighter, and I think that's true. Like, I've joked that I feel like he's had his sweat gland surgically removed because he doesn't seem to get nervous, right? He stares things down and he takes them on. This was too big of a thing for him to do that. And that's why we're now going to be going into this leadership process to pick a new prime minister.
He did seem relaxed. He seemed himself. He seemed at peace with the decision, Aaron. But again, I think telling your kids the day before you announce it is probably an indication of how long you may have struggled with this decision. He also talked about Pierre Poilievre saying that, again, he didn't believe his vision was the right one for Canada, but he said he absolutely believed that there was someone out there that could beat him, which I thought was kind of interesting too, because, you know, maybe 5 days ago, he would have thought he was that person.
He probably still, to a certain
Yeah, he
extent,
probably
is that
still,
person.
yeah.
I thought he looked humbled. I thought, actually, for the first time that I can remember, he looked older. He looked like he had actually aged. I think, you know, it felt like a lot of the affectation that sometimes goes into the way he speaks publicly was drained out of him today. And, you know, granted, that is sort of a classic observation when someone concedes defeat, that was their finest moment and they were so eloquent. If only we'd seen that person more in the previous months. But I think it was striking to see him today. I think his diagnosis is correct, that if you're a party leader, if you're a prime minister, you can't plausibly contest an election with that much kind of internal dysfunction around you or behind you. There was always a plausible argument for Justin Trudeau staying on as leader and leading the Liberals into the next election, even as things got quite bad. The problem, I guess the requirement for that, though, was that he had to at least be able to hold together caucus and cabinet. And once cabinet and caucus fell out behind him, once caucus aligned against him, once Chrystia Freeland left, there just wasn't a path forward. I think it's interesting that he is viewing this in terms of removing himself from the debate, from the picture, and whether that changes things. I think that is a big question now. I'm sure the Conservatives were banking on running against Justin Trudeau in the next election. They will now have to make some different calculations. And voters themselves will now have to look and say, was it Justin Trudeau we didn't want? Or was it the Liberal Party we didn't want? Is it the Conservative Party we want?
Yes.
Those are the questions that now could get a bit clearer now that Justin Trudeau, who has been as public and prominent a prime minister as we've ever had, has now removed himself from the picture.
David, do you want to
We've got a statement from NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, and often on days like this, you see the thank you for your service statement. That's not what this statement is. Jagmeet Singh says, Justin Trudeau's Liberals let down Canadians. They let you down on home prices. They let you down on healthcare. They let you down by allowing corporate greed to run wild. Even with the country facing another serious blow to Canadian jobs and our cost of living, this time from Donald Trump, they're still focused only on themselves and their political fate. The problem is not Justin Trudeau. It's every minister that's been calling the shots. It's every Liberal MP that looked down their nose at Canadians Canadians who are worried about high costs or crumbling healthcare. The Liberals do not deserve another chance, no matter who is the leader. It goes on like that for a couple more paragraphs where he takes shots at Pierre Poilievre.
Wonder where that guy's been for the past 6
Yeah,
months.
but that's, normally it's served himself difficult times, served the country difficult times, sacrificed himself. No, this is about, right now, there is a vacuum of progressive leadership that will be filled potentially by the Liberal leadership race, but Jagmeet Singh is trying to fill it now, and that's why we're going to hear from him very quickly.
And to be clear, this changes a lot of things. This changes, as Aaron pointed out, how the Conservatives adjust their strategy to no leader and then someone. It changes potentially. It obviously has changed how Jagmeet Singh responds. Let's bring in David's panel, because we're in David's studio, because that's what happens during this time. And I don't have a studio big enough for everybody. Vandana Qatar is a former advisor to Prime Minister Trudeau. Greg McEachern, former Liberal ministerial staffer. Melanie Richer is a former communications director of the NDP. We did have to say goodbye to Lisa Ray, former Conservative minister. She will come back, so don't worry, because I'm sure, as always, she has lots to say too. Vandana, I'm going to start with you, because I know I can see in your face you're a little emotional. So I want to start from sort of the human perspective before we get into all the other pieces.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's a tough day. I first met the Prime Minister when I was 20 years old. That was quite some time ago. And my journey with him started on leadership, revamping the party and in opposition in third party, and then all the way until about 2 years ago. So
you were there for the bad days and the good days.
Yeah. So you can argue I'm here for this day. So listen, it's tough, but I think there's a lot to be proud of. I want to thank the Prime Minister for his service and even just giving me the opportunity to serve a country. You know, my dad came here in 71, and I got to give back in a place that's given my family so much. But there's a lot to be proud of. Getting the party from third to first, which was unheard of at the time. The child benefits, middle class tax cut, housing strategy, a revamped relationship with Indigenous communities, and a lot of stuff for racialized and underestimated Canadians. So I think there's a lot of good there. So lots to be proud of. You know, you can make the argument he could have went earlier or whatever, but I think the point is he did make the right decision today. I think it's good for him to put his family first. I do see him being more relaxed and just feeling at peace with the decision. And that's what you need. Right. I do think, no leader lasts forever. But as much as I am personally sad today, he's been a good friend and mentor to me. But, I always look forward to whatever brings the new Liberal Party next.
Yeah. How about you, Greg? Because you've been with the Liberal Party for a long time. You've seen this story before. Leaders come and go. This very different because, as we've been talking about it, some of this very much self-inflicted. Yeah. But when it came time to make the decision, here we are.
Yeah, and Vandana and I were talking out in the hallway, and we were both, this is a hard day. I'm thinking of the Prime Minister. I'm thinking a lot of friends that I have on staff, and it's been a difficult couple of months, especially, in some of those relationships. I think about the guy that I met Justin, I think, during the 2006 Junos, but when he became an MP, I remember Mr. Ignatieff had a summer caucus in Cape Breton. And I won't go into the details, but there was something going on with a bit of sadness in a family. And Justin Trudeau had stepped in and did something really nice that no one will ever know about except for that family in the days after that. And I thought, that's a good guy. He doesn't have to do that. And he's not doing it for show. And he was doing a lot of that when the Liberal Party, the next year, historic low, and he continued to build the party. So, Liberals are rightly grateful to him for that, and I think he's done a lot of good. I said in an interview with CBC on Friday, I had been talking to a couple of MPs, and I think where this was going was it was not going to end up in a good place, and that a lot of us who like Justin Trudeau did not want it to go to that place. He deserved better. Yeah. And I wish it wasn't this way. I wish that, as David said, the first response is usually, some congratulatory and it's not. I think people need to take a breath. Remember that, there's been a lot of personal sacrifice. I'll be blunt. He went into this as a married man and he's coming out of this not. That's got to be tough on a family. You referred, Rosie, to the dinner last night. So I'm thinking about those things. The other thing, just to kind of tie a knot in this is Aaron made a really good point about the Save the Furniture part of this. And I think we look at Brian Mulroney and the big difference is if you read books about that time, his caucus was very loyal to him to the end. Justin Trudeau's caucus really wants to be loyal to him, but they just kept asking for things that seemed to be pretty basic.
Yeah.
And we're being told that they were coming and they didn't come. So eventually you just winnow away all that support.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of sad we're at this point.
Yeah, and I will say that Brian Mulroney did a much better job of managing caucus relations than Justin Trudeau ever did, to Mr. Mulroney's credit. From an NDP lens, what are you, let's talk about Justin Trudeau before we move on to Jagmeet Singh, who we're going to hear from in about, at about 1 o'clock, I think.
Yeah, well, I think I agree with a lot of what has been said already. Do I agree with everything the Prime Minister has done? No. Do I think he missed the moment a lot of the times and had a hard time connecting with what folks were going through in a way that made folks feel like they were being heard and understood? Yep. Totally. But he's done some really good things for this country. He's done some really good things for people. I will forever love dental care. And I know, I'll say the NDP pushed that, but he delivered on it, right? That is a reality. People that I love are getting dental care because, something that the Prime Minister did. So regardless of all of this thing that's happened lately and where we are at with caucus, I think people will remember him kindly. He wasn't mean-spirited. He wasn't, punching to punch. And I think that's really important in our leaders. And it's not always the case. So maybe that's what I'll say about the Prime Minister. I think folks will remember him for the kind things that he did. And he did have an impact, a positive impact on people. Other stuff, for sure. Mm-hmm. But I think that's probably something that we should be reflecting on today. All parties should be doing that.
We can talk about some of the controversies and own goals too, because that has obviously also contributed to his time as Prime Minister and to where he finds himself today and where he found himself with his caucus in terms of being able to manage some of those relationships. On the right of your screen is, of course, West Bloc. We're waiting to hear from the leader of the Bloc Québécois, François Blanchet, who will have something to say about this. Maybe not quite as harsh as Jagmeet Singh's statement, but we'll wait and see. I should point out we do have some tweets from some leadership contestants or people we expect will be leadership contestants, Christy Clark and Mark Carney. We can show you those in the coming moments as well. They obviously thanking the Prime Minister for his service. Let's go to the CBC's Ashley Burke. She is at Rideau Cottage, where the Prime Minister was speaking to Canadians and announced that he is stepping down. Ashley, what did you hear there, and what struck you from Justin Trudeau today?
Well, Rosie, it was sort of a subdued scene from the few members of his staff that were here at Rideau Cottage as he stepped outside and said that after almost a decade serving as leader, that he was no longer going to be the leader of the Liberal Party. And there were more than 24 journalists and as well videographers and photographers all packed outside. And when he stepped out of Rideau Cottage, he cracked open the door and came down the stairs, and his speech in this moment, actually, the resignation speech that was sitting on the stand, it blew away. He did have a teleprompter, but it was a moment where he kind of made light of it before giving that speech that you heard, where he repeatedly talked about what he said was that he's a fighter, but that Parliament had been paralyzed by what's going on and just simply isn't functioning after what he called one of the longest serving minority parliaments, that it was time really for a reset. So that's something that he spoke about repeatedly, and really the scene here, quiet, a lot of journalists, very subdued.
Of his staff there, Ashley, or do you have the sense that there was anyone with him in the house or anyone there supporting him and sort of prepping him for this?
We didn't get a sense of that on the scene. There were a couple members of his staff that were here. Certainly for some of them, it seemed like this was a surreal moment, that they did not think this is how this was going to end, that they thought there'd be an election before he left, even though there has been obviously building momentum from within his own caucus, especially over the holidays, for him to step down and resign. But still, I think for them, this is not really a day that they wanted to see or that they expected to happen when it did, perhaps.
Okay. I don't know if that's the Prime Minister's motorcade behind you. I do not want you to get crushed on air, just letting you know that I think that is his motorcade.
It does appear that's what that is.
Yeah.
It is.
Just to let
people... a quick press conference. He only took a few questions, yeah. Rosie, as well. 4 in total.
And to let people know, he obviously continues to be Prime Minister and is continuing with some of that work today. He has the Canada-US Cabinet Committee, and we've also been told there's a full Cabinet meeting at 3 p.m. Eastern. Ashley, just one last quick word from you.
Yeah, I think just what happens next was a big focus today, and as well from reporters wanting to know what was the moment that he made this decision, what was the turning point, because there have been calls for a long time. Has he put his party in a position where they're going to be hurt heading into the next election because he didn't leave sooner? We didn't get a lot of details about what really that turning point was, and the key thing that his decision that made him turn around. But we do know that he did take time, he said, to reflect over the holidays and speak to his family and others around him to come to this decision. Because before the holidays, it didn't look like this was going to happen.
Ashley Burke, thank you. Ashley Burke at Rideau Cottage. Maybe we'll come back to you unless you come back here, and we'll talk to you when you're here. Thank you for that, Ashley Burke. We are going to say goodbye to viewers on CBC Television. Our coverage continues on CBC News Network or wherever you stream CBC News. Rosemary Barton here in Ottawa. We are, of course, covering the resignation of Justin Trudeau, him announcing that he will step aside once a new Liberal Party leader has been chosen. We are waiting for details of how that will unfold, but we can also tell you that Parliament has will be prorogued until March 24th, buying the Liberal Party some time to get that new leader in place. And we're standing by to hear from opposition leaders. The Bloc leader up first. We're going to hear from Jagmeet Singh at 1 o'clock, and we'll see whether Pierre Poilievre appears as well. I can't imagine he wouldn't have something to say on a day like this. And I'm going to go back to the CBC's David Cochrane to see what you're hearing. There are some words from potential leadership candidates floating out there already. Christy Clark, Mark Carney, congratulating the Prime Minister on his run and thanking him for their public service. That's what you should do, I would think, if you want to be a leader or a leadership candidate, yes, and you're trying to get the Liberal Party to like you.
It's interesting, though, before we move on to that, it's just thinking about what we just witnessed here, right? Mm-hmm. That a 3 election winning Prime Minister is leaving, because of internal unrest and external dissatisfaction. And it's just a reminder, Rosie, that political careers rarely end with joy.
Yep.
You're either defeated or it becomes so exhausting and untenable you leave. And, you don't have a term limit system like in the United States where Barack Obama can win 2 terms and then
peace out.
Peace out, because it was a sort of, not on his terms, I guess, but on the constitutional terms.
Yeah.
This is a much more different kind of thing, right? It's a result of a combination of external factors and really what was growing to be a potential full-blown caucus revolt. I mean, it was the most polite revolt I'd ever seen in terms of, we respectfully suggest you leave, and it built to this point. And now you're seeing, Christy Clark thanking him. You're seeing Mark Carney thanking him. We're waiting to hear from potential cabinet ministers. The full cabinet is going to meet at 3 o'clock Eastern time, by the way. There's supposed to be a meeting starting at around 12 to 1:30, I believe, of the Canada-US Committee of Cabinet. Yeah. So that's going to be an important group for the Prime Minister to speak with as they have 2 weeks to go until Donald Trump is inaugurated and to deal with all of the implications of that. But it's going to be interesting to hear what the Liberal Party says today. We need to hear from the president. Yeah. We need to hear from the executive board in terms of what they're planning to do and when we will know what they're going to do. Because this is not just an internal party thing right now. This is the process to pick for however long the next Prime Minister of Canada. And, we waited 3 weeks to hear the Prime Minister's response to Chrystia Freeland. I don't think we can wait 3 days even to hear what the Liberal Party of Canada has to say, because people are going to want some clarity on how the First Minister is going to be picked.
And the Prime Minister also said that he spoke to the party president last night. And as we know, and as you've been reporting, those conversations had already started quietly inside the executive about how that would unfold. But let's take a moment as we wait for some other reaction to David's point, Aaron, to reflect on the fact that this is a Prime Minister who won 3 elections and it is choosing to step away now. There is sort of a natural life cycle to a governing party in this country, and we are about at that point. So whether you get defeated, like Stephen Harper did in 2015, or whether you get pushed out, because that's a Liberal Party thing as well. The way this unfolded, it is sort of time. Canadians do tend to tire of parties and governments after about a decade or so.
After about a decade. Yeah, you only get a decade. in
Yeah,
office.
I mean, it's pretty good. Slightly better than Barack Obama.
Yeah, look, he's going to leave as the seventh longest serving prime minister.
I know that. I knew you would know that.
He'll be basically within range of Stephen Harper and Jean Chrétien. I think there were obviously in previous decades prime ministers who lasted longer than that, particularly Mackenzie King. But I think it's probably hard to imagine at this point in this kind of media cycle, in this kind of political world, anyone going past that point.
Yeah.
Justin Trudeau, to my mind, I always thought of him as actually somebody who might not last.
I'm going to stop you there because the Bloc leaders popped up. Just keep that thought because it's a good one. Here's the leader of the Bloc Québécois, Yves-François Blanchet, reacting to Justin Trudeau's announcement that he is stepping aside.
2025, dont la suite, j'espère, sera aussi intéressante
And I
que le
hope that it will
commencement.
be as interesting as
Qui est sous de bons auspices.
the
Je crois
early part of
que
the year.
le Premier ministre Trudeau a pris
I
la
think
bonne
that Prime Minister
décision
Trudeau has
en
made the
choisissant
right
de
decision
quitter ses fonctions et de
by choosing
déterminer
to
un peu
resign
la suite des
and
choses pour qu'on ait un
to
minimum de
allow us to have a minimum of predictability.
Je souhaite après le 24 mars,
After March 24th,
de
of
nombreuses
course,
années de
I
bonheur et de
hope that he
sérénité.
will have many years
Mais son
of happiness and
successeur ou sa
serenity.
successeur
And
devra
his successor
déclencher des
will have
élections
to call an election
dès son arrivée en poste.
as soon
Parce que,
as they are
quoi
on the
qu'on
job.
fasse,
Regardless
le Parti libéral du Canada
of what we
actuel,
do,
c'est
the
le
current
Parti
Liberal
libéral
Party
de Justin
is
Trudeau.
Justin Trudeau's Liberal
Et dans
Party.
tous les gens qui pourraient
And
être intéressés
with all the
par
people
sa
who might be
succession,
interested
ceux qu'on connaît,
in
sont des
replacing
gens de
him,
l'entourage de Justin
most of them
C'est
are
le
from
même
Justin
Parti
Trudeau's entourage.
libéral
So
du
it's the
Canada,
same Liberal
avec
Party
le
of
même
Canada
bilan qui
with
est
the
celui
same
du
record,
Parti libéral du
which is
Canada.
that of the
Il
Liberal Party of Canada
appartiendra
of Justin
à
Trudeau.
l'histoire de faire le
It will be
bilan
up to history
personnel de
to
Justin
determine
Trudeau
what
comme
is
premier
Justin
ministre.
Trudeau's personal record as a Prime Minister.
Mais les Québécois, eux,
But Quebecers
vont porter un jugement
will
sur le bilan du gouvernement
judge
libéral en général.
the record of the Liberal
Et
government
j'ai
in
bien
general.
peur que ce jugement
And
ne
I
soit
fear
extrêmement
that
sévère.
this will be
C'est un
quite
gouvernement
severe.
extraordinairement
This is a
centralisateur
very
qui empiète
centralizing
systématiquement sur les
government
compétences et les juridictions du Québec et des
that
provinces et qui ignore les
consistently
demandes non seulement
ignores
du Québec,
requests
mais
not only
des
from Quebec
provinces.
but other
C'est un
provinces
gouvernement qui a été
and does
inactif
not
dans la
recognize
lutte au changement
jurisdiction.
climatique. C'est un gouvernement
This government has
qui
not
a
done enough for climate
opposé
change. This
des
government
comportements
has
farouches
opposed
contre la volonté du Québec
behaviors.
de vivre dans un État qui soit laïque. C'est
People
un
wanted
gouvernement
Quebec
qui n'a présenté
to
que
be
des
a
apparences en
secular
matière de
province,
préservation
and
de la langue
they
française. C'est un
try to keep up
gouvernement
appearances with regards to the
multiculturaliste
preservation
jusqu'à
of the French language.
l'irresponsabilité, au
They
point
are
qu'on
very
voit dans nos
multiculturalist,
rues des
and we see
manifestations
this.
qui
We
se
have protests
revendiquent
in the
de
streets. We
positions
see people in
appuyées
the
par la
streets with
religion
positions that are
qui
supported by religious beliefs,
flirtent dangereusement
and they are
avec la
dangerously flirting
propagande haineuse sur la
with
base des
hate
valeurs
propaganda
de ce
on the
gouvernement.
basis of the
C'est un
values of this
politique avec
government.
un gouvernement,
This
avec des
is a
politiques
government
migratoires
with
qui auront été extraordinairement
migrant
nocives pour le
policies
Québec,
that will have
malgré des
been negative for
modifications ou des
Quebec,
volontés de modification
despite a certain will
annoncées
to bring
récemment.
forth amendments
C'est un
recently.
gouvernement qui
This is a
aura
government
complètement perdu le
that
contrôle
will
sur
have
les
lost
dépenses
control
publiques
over
et oublier
public
que l'argent des
expenditures.
dépenses
And don't
publiques
forget that
vient
these
toujours des
expenditures
poches des
always
contribuables,
come from the
avec
pockets
tout
of
le mal que ça peut
taxpayers.
faire,
And with
notamment
all the harm that this
pour
can
les retraités.
cause, especially for retired
C'est un
people.
enjeu assez significatif.
This
Je
is
pense
a
aussi, j'ai envie
significant
d'ajouter
issue,
pour les
and I'd
jeunes
like to add
familles
also
qui
for
commencent à
young
trouver tout
families.
ça bien
And they're starting
serré.
to find that
Un bilan très
it's very
négatif en
difficult to
matière de
make ends meet.
sécurité, que ce soit
Also
au
with
niveau
regards to
international
safety,
par son refus
whether it
obstiné
be
de rencontrer
internationally,
ses obligations
refusing to meet
à l'endroit de
obligations with
ses alliés
regards
et de
to
ses
allies
partenaires, alors que la
and partners,
géopolitique
as
mondiale
we see
prend des
geopolitics on the world
inquiétantes.
stage
Aussi la
are
sécurité
becoming
intérieure
concerning.
sur
Also,
des
domestic
enjeux
security
d'ingérence
with
étrangère
regards
dans
to
la
foreign
démocratie
interference in our
canadienne et cette
democracy,
espèce de
and this type of
volonté de balayer sous le tapis.
will to try to
Donc,
sweep
c'est
under
un
the
bilan
rug certain things.
que les Québécois vont
So,
aborder, je
Quebecers
crois,
will look
avec
at this record
énormément de sévérité.
with
Il n'y a
a
qu'une
stern
seule
point of
façon
view,
de
and there is only
disposer
one
de
way
ces enjeux-là,
to look at these
c'est
issues,
que le Parti libéral
and the Liberal
s'expose à une
Party will
élection
have to
générale
call
le
a general
rapidement
election
possible,
as
bien
quickly as
comprenant qu'il y
possible.
aura le choix
We
d'un
understand
chef qui
that
doit
they
se
need to
faire
choose a
très
leader,
rapidement.
and this will happen
Je
very
comprends
quickly.
que
I
suite au
understand
24 mars,
that following
normalement,
March
on
24th,
sera
normally,
en élection générale
we
à
will be
très, très, très court terme.
in an election. over the very, very short term. And so this is the comment that I would like to make following the decision made by our Prime Minister, and we'll see. Mr. Blanchet, would you prefer for the House to reconvene and have another non-confidence vote and to have an election immediately? Do you think that he's trying to buy time with this prorogation? Well, there are so many people who have been asking for Justin Trudeau to leave, and now he's making the decision to leave, and it would be difficult to ask him tomorrow morning to be leader of a party in the middle of a campaign. What cannot happen is to create delays or to have a late election. We need to have a general election in the middle of spring 2025. That's very clear. But there's no scenario where you would be able to support the next leader of the Liberal Party to keep the government in power. The Liberal power is changing its leader in order to go through an election campaign. I hope this government has survived artificially due to an agreement that did not really give anything for the NDP for a very long time. So there is no viable reason for this government to stay in power any longer than the minimum of the minimum necessary to designate a new leader. Do you think this delay is with prorogation? Do you think this is legitimate? Answer. Well, there's going to be a leadership race. So either we do that or we keep Justin Trudeau in party without leaving. And so I think it's legitimate. I think it's legitimate given what civil society has been asking for with regards to Mr. Trudeau to have immediately a leadership race for the Liberal Party, and I don't see any other scenarios. And at the end of March, when we come back, there are many different scenarios that could play out, but they all need to lead to a general election, whether it be through a vote in the House or perhaps a visit to the Governor General. We need to have general election very soon.
On the table that the Bloc Québécois has been asking for, that a new Liberal leader decides to say, we would like your support in exchange for this.
We are beyond that. Now is time for an election, which I will understand that would be held after the Liberal Party has chosen a new leader. And there's nothing else to be taken into consideration at this point.
Mr. Trudeau said that this should bring down tempers in the House. I don't think that anything will lower the level of tension within Parliament. We never think that prorogation is good news. It's perhaps the lesser of two evils. It's not necessarily good news. In the following months, the government of Canada will have to deal with President-elect Donald Trump. And as we know, we will see if this will happen or not, but we need to have someone to face the arrival of Mr. Trump in the White House, and this is the most important consideration, regardless of partisan politics. Parliament needs to be reconstituted. Someone has to have the mandate to deal with the American government.
Here is the Bloc leader, Yves-François Blanchet. He is the first opposition leader to come out and give his reaction to Justin Trudeau's announcement today, saying to the Prime Minister that he made the right decision. He wishes him many years of happiness ahead. Also criticizing some of the things the government has done, including public spending, he says, and suggesting that by March 24th, there's a good chance this country will be in an election. Obviously, he would be part of that decision. The person who wants an election probably the most in the country, Pierre Poilievre, has released a video on social media. We're going to play that for you now.
Good day. Canadians desperate to turn the page on this dark chapter in our history might be relieved today that Justin Trudeau is finally leaving. But what has really changed? Every Liberal MP in power today and every potential Liberal leadership contender fighting for the top job helped Justin Trudeau break the country over the last 9 years. All Liberal politicians actively worked to pass into law the job-killing inflationary carbon tax, a tax that Carbon Tax Carney endorsed in his book. All supported a law quadrupling the tax over the next 5 years. All voted for or actively supported Trudeau's out-of-control spending, debt, and immigration. All passed Trudeau's housing policies that doubled the cost of homes. All Liberal politicians helped pass catch-and-release bail and house arrest for the most rampant reoffenders, policies that increased violent crime 50%, gun crime 116%, and hate crime by 250%. So given that Liberal MPs and leadership contenders unanimously supported everything Trudeau has done, why dump him now, right before an election? Have they had a change of heart? Is it because they feel guilty that they doubled housing costs, hiked taxes, unleashed crime, broke immigration, forced a quarter of the population into poverty? No. They continued supporting Trudeau when he did all of those things. No, their only objection is that he is no longer popular enough to win an election and keep them in power. They want to protect their pensions and paycheck by sweeping their hated leader under the rug months before an election to trick you and then do it all over again. Now, while leaderless Liberals focus on saving their jobs and fighting each other for power, the country spirals out of control, an out-of-control housing emergency, an out-of-control migrant crisis, an out-of-control $62 billion deficit, not to mention tariff threats from the United States. Oh, and another NDP Liberal carbon tax hike kicks in this April 1st. Everything's out of control, and now the government is out of control. This cannot go on. We need a carbon tax election now to choose between the NDP Liberal costly coalition that taxes your food, punishes your work, doubles your housing costs, and unleashes crime and drugs in your community, or common sense Conservatives who will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. Canadians can take back control of their lives and their country. Take back control of our border, take back control of immigration, take back control of spending, deficits, and inflation. Take back control of our streets by locking up criminals, banning drugs, treating addiction, and stopping gun smugglers. We'll cap spending, axe taxes, reward work, build homes, uphold family, stop crime, secure borders, rearm our forces, restore our freedom, and put Canada first. All with one mission: to bring home Canada's promise that every hardworking Canadian gets a powerful paycheck and pension that buys affordable food and homes on safe streets, where all are united for the country we know and love. Canada first, Canada last, Canada always. Let's bring it home.
All right, that is, of course, the leader of the official opposition, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, in a video that he just posted on social media. We played it in its entirety. I don't think we'll do that again, but I assume that means that he will not be facing questions from the media. His take, of course, though, that an election now is needed more than ever. Well, he's going to get one, and he's probably going to get one sooner than had been planned, or around the same time at any rate. But for sure, what today means is that an election is coming. Lisa Raitt, former Conservative cabinet minister, is joining us now. Thank you for being here. I wonder where Conservatives' heads are at today, Lisa, because I think it's fair to say that, yes, they want an election, but they would have liked to have an election against Justin Trudeau.
Absolutely. And I think they would have liked to have had an election earlier. James Moore, who I know is on the show a lot too, he had a really, I think, a really smart post this morning where he said, why didn't this happen in October or December, after any one of the by-elections where the losses were? Because right now what we're facing is the first 100 days of a Trump presidency, where we will essentially be dead in the water with no parliament sitting and an uncertainty as to who is going to be the prime minister coming out of that, along with another election. And I mean, we can look in the back and complain about that's not the way it should have happened. Sure. But the reality is that our move forward is going to be looking at an election. I think, Pierre Poilievre puts out very clearly what the position of the Conservatives is, which is it doesn't matter who it is at the top of the Liberal Party. This really is an issue that has to do with the last 10 years of policies from this Liberal government, and anybody who's associated with the government is associated with the policies. and how Canadians feel today.
That is more challenging, though. I think you would agree, because they've spent the past, well, since Pierre Poilievre was leader, really effectively blaming Justin Trudeau for everything, including, inflation, everything you can imagine. And so now to have to pivot to we're going to blame person X because we're not going to know right away for the problems. It complicates things, I think, a little bit. I think you're right. The only way to go after it in terms of strategy is to say everybody's like him. But you're punching fog a little bit because you don't have a clear target.
I don't know about that. I think what the Conservatives have done effectively is starting to hone in and focus, maybe because the writing was on the wall, quite frankly, that Trudeau was going to leave. But they have started to hone in and focus more upon how Canadians, how they feel right now. Are they better off than they were in 2015? Are you better off because of the policies that have been put in place? And they're going to double down on that analysis moving forward. And we'll see where Canadians are. But, it's interesting to watch in the news today. There's how people are reacting is very different than how general Canadians are reacting. I think general Canadians are saying, okay, good, let's move on. We want to see change, and what kind of change does this bring? And I don't know whether or not the Liberal Party has an answer to say that there is big change coming, because everything is around the carbon tax. That's exactly what this election is going to be about. Mark Carney can't back away from the carbon tax.
Well, he previously did in a speech, but yeah, I take your point. He did say he wasn't sure it was the path forward anymore. But I think the bigger point too is after almost 10 years, Canadians are how could the Liberal Party, and you can speak to this because Stephen Harper tried to do it in 2015. Sure. How do you try to convince Canadians that after a decade, just because you've changed the leader, that they are something now that there's something there that Canadians want?
Oh, for sure. I mean, Rosemary, I remember being on the doorsteps in 2015 where we lost government. I still won my riding. But the reality is that there, but for the grace of God, go I. I mean, people were done with the Conservatives, and I was lucky to scrape it out. Didn't scrape it out in 2019 because I was still affiliated with the Harper government, quite frankly. So, it's hard to shake it off. It's party affiliated. It's not leader affiliated. And if they want to talk about a fresh face for the Liberal Party, it's got to be someone from outside of any of the names that we've heard so far.
Okay, Lisa, stand by. I'm going to bring in Kate Harrison, also a Conservative, a political analyst. Just get your take, Kate, on, let's start with what you heard there from the leader, from Pierre Poilievre, in terms of positioning against sort of the unknown now, right? I think everyone knew and thought that Pierre Poilievre wanted to take on Justin Trudeau just as much as Justin Trudeau wanted to take on Pierre Poilievre.
I think, Rosemary, we're talking about potential replacements that really have been part and parcel of the Trudeau government and the regime and his advisors. So even if we talk about, the names that might replace him, we're not talking about a departure in terms of a lot of the decisions and policies that have gone into this government. So I think, the Conservatives are right to point that out. They're right to point out that a lot of the names that are being bandied around are indeed people that have been very close to Trudeau. That includes Mark Carney. Even though he's not a member of cabinet, he's been a core advisor, including on economic policy. So it's important for the Conservatives to make that connection and make that link. And if we are looking at likely a spring election based on what Mr. Singh has had to say today, there's really not a lot of runway for a new leader of the party to come in and brand themselves as being all that different, particularly if they are saddled with a lot of the Trudeau cabinet baggage, which a lot of these potential candidates would be.
Okay, Kate Harrison, thank you for jumping on. We'll be in touch later in the day if that's okay. So stay by your phone if you don't mind. I'll bring everybody back here in the studio to get some reaction to Pierre Poilievre, or if you've got other things to say, David, because sometimes you do.
Yeah, we got a couple of things that have happened. We have a statement by the president of the Liberal Party of Canada, Sachit Mehra, saying that in accordance with the Liberal Party's constitution, I will call a meeting of the National Board to be held this week to begin the nationwide democratic process of selecting a new leader of the party. So that gives us a sense that there will be a meeting this week of the broad Liberal Executive Board to figure out what to do here and to go forward. We're getting some reaction from people. Chrystia Freeland has tweeted her reaction. I thank Justin Trudeau for his years of service to Canada and Canadians. I wish him and his family the very best. We have reaction, as we said, from Mark Carney. Thank you, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, for your leadership, for your many contributions to Canada, and for the sacrifices you and your family have made for public service. Wishing you the best for your next chapters. And Christy Clark, all of the people talked about as leader, have tweeted. After a lifetime of public service, Justin Trudeau has stepped aside as both leader of the Liberal Party and Prime Minister of Canada. I want to thank him as a Canadian for his service to the country that he so clearly loves. I wish him and his family well. As a lifelong Liberal, I look forward to joining tens of thousands of Canadians to choose our next leader. This is the biggest opportunity in over a decade that we've had to grow our party and welcome new Liberals, including Canadians concerned about the future of our country. Let's seize it.
That's Christy Clark, that last
That
one?
is Christy Clark. It's interesting because she did, I believe, Greg could probably get into this when we get to him, did take out a membership in the Conservative Party of Canada,
Yes,
I believe,
she
to
did.
vote for
Yes.
Jean Charest
Yes,
in the
she
last
did.
leadership. So that may be a complicating issue as you seek to lead the Liberal Party of Canada, but we'll see how they deal with that. But you saw there, Pierre Poilievre has his attack line focused already on carbon tax Carney, as he refers to Mark Carney. He also had a interesting attack on Chrystia Freeland on the day she quit, where he said she was willing to go along with everything this government did until they asked her to take a demotion.
Yeah.
So those become the attack lines, I think, for two of the more prominent, with the broader public leadership contenders, I think, to replace the Prime Minister, that we're going to see from the Conservatives. They started to lay that out right away when Chrystia Freeland quit. And I think we saw it in the video, which they probably prepared before today.
I feel like,
there was a
given the
soundtrack,
music,
there's a
I would say
soundtrack.
yes. Yeah.
So it feels like, they have been, Fred Delory, who's on a flight right now and unable to join us, he has made the point that they have pivoted to Carney because they think that's inevitable. That is who they think will end up as the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada. So they want
quite
to
a
start
gamble there.
defining and
Yeah.
attacking him. Well, they think everyone else is already tied to the Prime Minister.
Sure.
So this is the outsider candidate. They haven't attacked Christy Clark just yet. I don't know if that will happen or when that will happen, but that's at least a thought process, according to the former national campaign director for the Conservatives, behind going after Carney, as hard as they are.
It's interesting, Aaron, because they're trying to tie people to Justin Trudeau and his unpopularity, but then you heard Pierre Poilievre and then our two Conservative friends there try and suggest that they're all the same. And that to me, I think is it's potentially challenging because if, and we don't know, but if the problem really was just Justin Trudeau, everyone was sick of him, and I'm not sure that that's the case, but then it becomes hard for them to find someone to fight against. And I think that is the challenge they're going to be in for the next, until the end, well, presumably sometime in March when this leadership race happens. You have a lot of targets and you have to decide who you're going to spend your time on when you're attacking them.
Yeah, and I think it sounds to me like they've basically divided it into two groups. One is Mark Carney, and one is everyone else.
What about Chrystia Freeland? She turned on the Prime Minister.
I think the Conservative argument at this point is essentially, if you had anything to do with this government over the last 9 years, you are Justin Trudeau, and there's no change. Whoever comes out of this pile, that doesn't matter. You're not change. You're just the same as Justin Trudeau. I think unless I'm mistaken, the only person who was named in that video was Mark Carney. Yeah. And I think that's because Mark Carney represents the cleanest break from Justin Trudeau. We can get into his involvement in advising the government and all that, but he has been outside this government. He is in image and in history is the clearest differentiator.
It's not a politician.
It's not a politician. And that leads me to my next point, which is, we don't know how he's going to do as a politician.
No, we don't.
We don't know how much caucus support he can rally. We don't know how he can do in a room as a political aspirant. And so that, I think, is the challenge there. So the Liberals, I think, the people who have been with this government can still differentiate themselves both in style and in policy. Mm-hmm. They could come out tomorrow and say, if I'm Prime Minister, we're pausing the carbon tax.
Yep.
If I'm Prime Minister, we're scrapping the carbon tax. They can come out and differentiate themselves policy-wise.
Sure.
But the cleanest break is Mark Carney, but then you have no idea how he will do politically.
And to be clear, there are also lots of big policy things that Justin Trudeau and his government put in place that are popular with Canadians. Mm-hmm. The Canada Child Benefit, I would argue, the child care program is popular. We know dental care is popular. Legalizing cannabis, I'm going to argue, is popular. So those are things that you could say I was part of the government that brought those into place and sort of push aside the things that didn't make sense anymore.
I was behind all the good stuff. And the bad stuff, that was Justin Trudeau's idea.
Yeah.
Look, and I think, Justin Trudeau, if he's thinking about this clearly, has to understand that he may be thrown under the bus in the next 2 months.
Totally.
That Liberals are going to have to be able to say,
To criticize him.
I didn't agree with this policy. I didn't agree with that policy. Now, the risk for them is, if you go back to when Justin Trudeau became Liberal leader, part of a big chunk of his speech when he became leader was about how Liberals had become so focused on fighting themselves and not fighting for Canadians, that they were concerned with their own internal bickering and not with the agenda. And this is the first time now in more than a decade that we've had a real Liberal leadership race. And arguably, you can debate whether the Justin Trudeau race was a real Liberal race because it was so clear from the outset that he was going to win. We don't know how this is going to work out. This does open up internal competition, and we don't know how that's going to play out in terms of the caucus, in terms of the party, in terms of different candidates supporting each other. Does this turn into them turning on each other? How does that work? But I think the clearest goal going forward is going to be, how do these candidates differentiate themselves? How do they explain that they're not just a different leader on the same party? They are going to take things in a slightly different direction.
And let me throw reconciliation into the policy legacy that I don't know that any Liberal candidate would want to leave behind. I don't know your thoughts on how you do that, and how difficult that might be for the Prime Minister to watch, as people who were once with him are now saying, I wasn't really down with that one, actually.
Yeah, I think there'll be different styles of people. Some people who will flout, reject, and maybe be a bit more negative towards him. I think, as you see,
Chrystia Freeland, for instance.
For sure. Yeah. But as David said, it's the most polite caucus result ever. I feel most people will say, times have changed.
Right.
Times have evolved. I will probably bet that there's probably no carbon tax after this, I'll be honest. I think that's probably dead in the water, but I think most people try to find a change. The one advantage all candidates have now that the Prime Minister did not have, early enough, is that they have now seen the Conservative playbook. They know how he is, they know how he brands himself, they know how his tactics are. So I think any leadership campaign that could be successful is going to think through, how am I punching through this? And any leadership campaign that's going to be successful is not only campaigning for the leadership, but going to make something that's transferable to a general election. Totally. Right? There's a few things they've talked about. There's, I think with Mark Carney and with
you almost said it. They're getting to you.
I know they are. That's how they work. There's average Canadians who might like him, but are they all going to sign up to be a Liberal member and then come and then vote? That's also two different things, right? And then you have the membership, you have the caucus, right? So I think it's better that they're all going to find different ways to connect, to be authentic. I think a lot of them have learned about how this Conservative Party has been very successful in connecting people through digital ability, whether it's through Twitter and YouTube and long form abilities that are different. So I think you've seen that, and anyone who's successful is going to use that, but also leverage it to connect with Canadians across the board for a general election will come shortly afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, the speed at which this has to happen. And I do know there are people calling and asking people, could you do this job? Could you do that job for my campaign? Some of them already have those people in place, but this has to happen very, very quickly.
So quickly. I really think it's down to speed, also how you can mobilize and how you can mobilize quickly, and a communications exercise, right? How you're branding yourself, whether that's an attachment to the Prime Minister or pushing away from the Prime Minister, and how consistent you are there. It's funny to hear Pierre Poilievre talk about, well, everybody is the same because they were tied to him. Pierre Poilievre is a minister in Stephen Harper's government. He talks about working people, and he did some really harmful things for workers when he was a minister. So I think it's all about how you communicate, how consistent you are, and arguably was one of the downfalls of the Prime Minister is that lack of clear, consistent communications in the last little bit. And I really agree with your point of how they're communicating about Pierre Poilievre. I think that's also a mistake that the Prime Minister and his team did, is they didn't have a strategy for how we're going to talk about this guy, how we're going to define him before he's able to redefine himself. So I really think those will be the key things as a New Democrat that I'll be paying attention to.
You're a political strategist. That's why we're asking.
But will be important for sure.
Yeah, Greg?
I do find it interesting, as you said, the last three Conservative leaders all served in Stephen Harper's cabinet. And when they want to talk about leadership, how quickly they turned on Scheer and O'Toole, and they have that mechanism. Admittedly, they can do it that way, but boy, that happened really, really quickly. I don't think that the Conservative leader I saw this before Christmas when Freeland quit cabinet. His ability to pivot quickly is not great. That video is kind of a bit odd. The day that Freeland quit, he was talking about Carney. And I thought, actually the news today is about Freeland. Why are you talking about Carney? Because you really, really want Carney to be the leader. And listen, I'm not declared for anyone. I've told David that I think Dominic LeBlanc would be a really key person right now. But what I was told when Carney went to the summer caucus, he didn't blow the roof off, right? And so there's a bit of a difference here when I see conservative strategists on Twitter or people talking about how we're going to pick the leader. It is going to be people are going to be calling people like Vandana and saying, okay, you saw people behind closed doors. What are they like? Who do we trust? Because, the reality is everything that was said about Stephen Harper or Justin Trudeau or Pierre Poilievre, they're all part of who they are. Eventually that side comes out, and it's how quickly you can decide how long your career is. I think the best example for, calling your own exit that I can think of is Frank McKenna. And, I went to university with his daughter, and in 1996, I was saying to her, does he want to run for federal leader when Chrétien's done? And she said, he's done next year. He told my mother 10 years. And sure enough, that's what Frank did. And, went out on a really high note. The Liberal Party, like a lot of politicians or a lot of political entities, fight the last battle. And I think a lot of the stuff around Justin Trudeau was we did not want the Martin Chrétien thing, so we didn't have it. There was no obvious successor, but we also didn't have an obvious succession plan. And that's not, we're not in a good spot today.
I'll bring in Lisa for her thoughts before I bring in a couple more guests. Lisa?
Well, I can't disagree with the fellow Severian there, Greg. And threw down the extreme quote. Not wearing my ring today. The reality is that there's going to be a lot of attempts to define before people start coming out of the chute.
Right.
In terms of knowing when to go, it's the best job in the world. I mean, it's going to be difficult for people to actually want to leave until the writing is clearly on the wall. And clearly on Wednesday, there was going to be some difficult conversations between the Liberal caucus and the leadership, the Prime Minister himself. So he made the decision, I think a reluctant decision, quite frankly, from looking at how he approached it today, of the path that's going to be forward. But I'm still, I guess I'm not really quite sure on what the next part of the process is. And, we're rounding into a really serious situation with Donald Trump, and not just the tariffs. Remember, with the threat of mass deportations on day one in this government, it's going to be massing at the Canadian border, and we don't have a parliament to deal with it. And we may have lots of cabinet ministers out stumping to be the next leader. It really is, awkward is too weak a word. It's a calamitous situation that we're going to find ourselves in for the next couple of weeks. And Canadians are going to have to bear with it while the Liberals try to figure out what's going to happen next.
Yeah, and maybe that too is an attack point for the Conservatives. To your point, Lisa, that it's the Liberals' fault that we are facing this potentially calamitous situation with Donald Trump, and everybody has to wear it. That's an awfully good point too. Okay, the panel is going to stick around. We're going to hear from a couple of Liberal MPs now. Chandra Arya was a longtime Trudeau loyalist, but last month joined the calls for the Prime Minister to resign, and he has also thrown his support behind Chrystia Freeland already. Nice to see you again, Chandra Arya.
Nice to see you too, Rosemary.
Okay, how are you feeling today, sir?
Today, is a bittersweet moment. Love him or hate him, Trudeau's legacy his achievement will shape Canada for years to come. And after I talked to you last, just before Christmas, I too spent the holidays reflecting on where Canada is, what has become, why it has become what it has become, and what we should do next. So I too did a lot of soul-searching during the holidays. And I'm glad that Trudeau is continuing until the next leader is elected.
And you continue to think that Chrystia Freeland should be the next leader?
As I said, I did my soul-searching. I did go in-depth into what Canada has become, what needs to be done, etc. Let's see how it goes.
Oh, interesting. So you're not 100% sure anymore. You're going to see who joins the race. Is that fair to say?
Right now, I'm happy that Trudeau is continuing till the next leader is elected. We need that stability there.
Yeah.
If anything happens from Donald Trump as soon as he gets sworn in on this month end, we need somebody who has got the knowledge, skills, and experience to deal with that.
Interesting. It sounds like you've had some other conversations since we last talked, Chandra Arya. What kind of length would you like the race to be? Because if you're coming back on March 24th, how long would you like the Liberal Party to give this race?
Ideally, to get a good leader selected, we need to have longer time period so that we can consult people from coast to coast to coast. However, given the circumstances that March end seems to be the deadline, is short period, but whatever the maximum the party leadership will decide, let's see.
Okay. Chandra Arya, thank you for jumping on. Appreciate it, sir. We'll check in with you as things unfold, because it's going to be a busy time for you and your party. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
I'm going to join now New Brunswick Liberal MP Wayne Long, who we've talked to many times as well, one of the first people who was out publicly saying Justin Trudeau needed to leave. Thanks for making the time, Wayne Long. How are you feeling about things today?
Hi, Rosie. It's not a day of celebration by any stretch. And I mean, I've certainly got some calls, you must be celebrating or your group must be celebrating. Not at all. Like, if anything, I say it's a day of sadness and reflection that we're actually to this point. So, I'm thankful for Justin Trudeau. I'm thankful for his 9+ years. I'm proud of a lot of the policies and initiatives. I think he was a wonderful leader for us through COVID, but clearly that time had come, and clearly I was on the he's got to go side of that fence. And, we achieved our objective today. And today is day one of the Liberal Party's rebirth and rebuild. And I'm looking forward to seeing great candidates put their name forward and, what vision we can have that presents a alternative to Pierre Poilievre government, because Canadians deserve to see that alternative.
And I asked this to Mr. Arya, Wayne Long, but what kind of length would you like to see the race have in order to, as Justin Trudeau himself said, have a real robust competition?
Look, those who are wringing their hands saying we don't have enough time, we have time. I would like to see a leadership contest go 60, 70 days. Let's end it, say the end of March. Let candidates come forward, present their vision. That's enough time for Canadians to get to know them, their policies, and where they want to take this party. So,
but just sorry to interrupt you, Wayne, but you don't think that there should be someone in place before Parliament gets back on March 24th?
Well, I mean, the Prime Minister has said he's going to stay on as interim leader. So let's move forward with that until we have the leadership contest. And I say that's at the end of March.
Okay. And I know people have been making calls, people who are interested in the job. I wonder if I'm sure you've had some of the calls, even though you're not running again, but have you had any further thoughts on who you think should replace Mr. Trudeau?
No, not really. I mean, my mind is wide open. I mean, we have wonderful people, obviously, like Dominic LeBlanc, Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, Melanie Joly, I believe Champagne, Anita Anand, and there probably will be others. That's what a leadership contest is all about. Mm-hmm. Let's see who puts their name forth, moves the party back to the center. Like I said before, there's all kinds of room for us to get back into the center, and Canadians deserve a, rebooted, rebranded Liberal Party that offers a viable alternative to a Pierre Poilievre government. We can do that. We just got to roll up our sleeves and get to work. So, I say, let's go.
Okay. Wayne Long, nice of you to make the time as always, sir. Thanks for being here.
Always.
Okay. Take
Pleasure.
care.
Thank
you. If you are just tuning in, we are, of course, all talking about and analyzing the decision by Justin Trudeau earlier today to step down as a Liberal Party leader and as Prime Minister. That will happen once a new leader is chosen, and we are waiting for more details about what that process will look like. But Parliament is also prorogued until March 24th, meaning that there will be no confidence vote, at least until it returns at that point. And I guess Wayne Long makes a good point. The Prime Minister could still be the Prime Minister on March 24th, depending on how the Liberal Party chooses to run this race. Getting lots of reaction from MPs, from opposition leaders. We're standing by to hear from Jagmeet Singh at 1 o'clock, and there'll be more analysis and thoughts through the day. Thank you for joining us on what is a dramatic day in Canadian politics, and one that has really shifted things in a pretty stark way in terms of how things are going to unfold over the next number of months. Not only this Liberal leadership race, but also the likelihood of election this spring, I think, has increased pretty profoundly as well. David, maybe I'll put that point to you, the idea that Wayne Long had there, that we could come back March 24th with Justin Trudeau as Prime Minister. Aaron, look at Aaron's face. He's like, no, you're wrong, Wayne. It's possible. I just don't, it would be strange for the Liberal Party to do it that way. But
well, I'm trying to do the math, and I've got the Liberal Constitution open here on the laptop, which is rapidly running out of battery, so I'm running into trouble here.
I have one here.
But I'm trying to get a sense of exactly, and I'm hoping maybe Greg Vondana can help with this. Who can vote in this thing? Because the membership rules are very different since Trudeau came in, right? You know, it became this supporter level of membership, not, you know, pay an annual amount and be allowed to vote. Really. And how do you allow, excuse me, signups in the time that you have, and what's the cutoff for that? Because this open membership process that they moved to when they sort of moved away from the traditional sort of party structure that existed during the leadership fight between the Chrétien Martin years. There is some concern out there that it's wide open to be abused if people want to do it. There's a lot of division and anger in the country right now, a lot of highly mobilized groups. You look at the issues around what's happening in the Middle East, you look at other special interest groups, what they might be able to do in terms of signups, how quickly and how much of an effect could they have, and what could that mean for shifting the balance of this leadership race. So the sooner the party president and the executive get together and sort of spell that out, you can kind of see the timeline, the risk, and the guardrails they've put around that in terms of how it works, right? Because it has the potential to infuse some other big issues